All right, guys, in this video, a friend of mine who is selling solar in California, in the Bay Area, is gonna call me and I'm going to give him some advice on how I would look at his sales process. I don't know what he was expecting out of what we would go over in this call. He sent me a bunch of recordings before it, and I was thinking maybe I give him some advice on his introduction and how he communicates with the customers in the first 4 to 7 seconds. And that's probably what would be useful at some level. However, I wanted to make sure I understood his entire sales process. Like what game is he playing? What system is he running, so that I could best understand how we can go track those metrics? Because if you don't track metrics of your deal flow or the stages that you take a customer through on a consistent basis, which we all have, and if you're winging it, then you're probably very likely underperforming. But why I went over this with him was because it is the most useful thing to understand first if you're an individual sales rep that wants to be a high performer, is what are the stages of your deal flow or the interaction checkpoints that you're trying to take a customer through before they say yes. If you can make that conscious and then track it, you have an easy system to run to know where to focus your energy on training.
Are the last months usually the best months? What makes it not good the last couple months of the year?
Your last month should be the highest selling month of the season. Statistically speaking, it should be your best month because you've had, how many knocking days have you had so far?
100 and something.
When did you start?
End of April.
117, 120, around there. I know knocking day quantities off the top of my head because they're really important for forecasting. So you have to look at everyone's contracts and be able to say, it's like, oh, you start April 27th and you're going to September 1st, it's probably 120 knocking days. And then you always subtract like 4 or 5 because even though people say they're never going to not take a day, oftentimes they find reasons to. Yep. So, but no, in theory, it should be your best month because you've already been selling for 100 days. In your case, 70 days in most cases. Who wouldn't be better at something after doing it for 70 days?
Exactly.
If it's not your best month, then there's a legitimate issue that you should look at. But there's all sorts of reasons why it has the tendency not to be the best and for people to not finish strong. And you'll probably hear, how many guys are you selling with right now?
Team of like 30 or 40.
What's their production like versus the rest of the company as a team?
We're like one of the top 2, 3 teams. Like 1 through 3.
How far above like the average are you guys in the company? Do you know?
For an example, we're like, there's different, are you familiar with solar? Probably,
fairly, right? Enough. Yeah. Enough that I could recruit very well against people who are trying to take my reps to do solar.
Yeah.
Which means enough.
So we have the most installs by far. That's okay. The stat that really matters.
Yeah, of course.
There's other teams that are selling more than us per week, but it's like,
yeah, sales doesn't matter. So what gets funded matters, right?
Yeah. So we're getting, let's see here, 50 to 60, maybe 65 closes per week.
Okay.
Majority of those are installed. Other teams are doing maybe 70, 80, but it's like comparatively a month ago to now, they're getting half as many installs as us when they were almost doubling our production and sales.
Yeah, so you can see how people start to peter out as you get closer to the end. The founder of Moxie used to say, this was my favorite thing by far, he used to say about like the summer itself, the actual sales season. He would go around and introduce himself in trainings. Like, let's say he got to an office and he was visiting Dallas, our Dallas office in like June, for example, middle of the summer-ish. He would go around, shake everybody's hand and be like, what's your name? And they'd tell him his name. He's like, my name's McKay. And he's like, hey, it's good to meet you. I'll really meet you in August though. Mm-hmm. So it's like, he's basically would point out this idea that you don't really know who you are until you're put in a situation where you have to finish strong. And so just keep that in mind as you're going into it, regardless. If you're in a high performing team, especially one that picks up steam throughout the year, they tend to perform much better at the end. So it may not be an issue, but just like watch out for that around you. It should be the highest selling month. You have all the data. You should know customer demographics really well. So like not all areas are the same, but you should easily be able to perform the same in every area if people can afford
that was
to pay
one
for
of
it.
my questions.
Figuring out the sales pipeline was a very difficult lesson for me to learn without the understanding that every step of the sale that you were involved in can be defined, you can track it, and when you understand how to track it, you can train yourself exactly on the things that will get you sales long-term, that will allow you to improve your sales skills that actually get you results. Over my 12-year sales career, I developed trainings and protocols that were really built on this painstaking method of, I don't understand why this isn't working, let me go fix it, and then we dial in each of the steps of the process, we go work at every layer of each step, we improve all of them so that we can track which variables are contributing to outcomes and which aren't, and that's where I came up with this idea of creating the Confidence Code, which is a sales course that's modeled after how I used to do this for a company that I helped to grow. I believe they're up to $300-ish million. The valuation would be much more than that. But anyway, we've made hundreds of millions of dollars using these principles. And the people that I learned them from, I really took to a completely different level. And now I have my own business where we're selling this in a body of work that I've really tried to think from the ground level up what actually works for sales reps, what helps them become better people in their lives, what helps them get better results right now in the field and have the most long-lasting skill set to get results for as long as they want to, and broadly applies across all of the areas of their life. This is called the Confidence Code. The Confidence Code is my body of work that is really the newest version of everything that I know about helping sales reps win, and I have a lot of experience with this. I have a lot of experience with this, not as a sales consultant, but in an actual company where my job depended on getting results with sales reps and scaling sales processes. This vocal meta messaging module that we've created and really are testing out right now is the flagship version of our sales training, that once you see this, you're going to want everything that we have to offer you. This vocal meta messaging module teaches you how to use the very tone and sound of your voice within your own personality to close more deals. So for just $457, you get my high quality videos covering the science of sales, the features of vocal prosody, which you'll learn more about, the 10 core influencing tonalities that I've taken to a completely different level and added some things that I think work a little bit better than the way that I first used them. Way less than these $1,000+ courses that I've seen people selling that have, I don't know, half the value maybe. It pays for itself within just a few sales. If you train on this stuff in the morning, you will have sales today because of the things that you learn. And you don't even have to go through the full module before you're like, all right, fine, I understand. I can do this. This is so easy. I'm adding a 30-minute team sales style training that I used to give for sales teams. I imagined if I was giving a sales training to you guys and you were a team that I needed to perform today, what type of training would I give you? That is for free. So if you hit the link at the top of the description in the video below, you can buy this for yourself. I can guarantee you that if you spend this $400 with me, I will ensure that it gets you results. And the only reason it's not going to get you results is if you don't do anything with it or apply it. You can't just pay for it and not watch the videos. Pay for it, watch the videos. Every video you watch will make you want to watch another one. Every video that you watch that's another video that you watch will make you want to apply this stuff because it's so fantastically good at getting results. Okay? Click the link and buy the thing.
I want to learn the overall arching strategy of sales and communication / persuasion, the whole vibe, but also how every area has its own niche, has its own little differences, and playing into that. Because I've noticed a trend, a little bit higher end, higher income areas, people retired, young families who are making a couple $100,000. It's those are the main areas where I considerably do better.
So you do better in what's the home values? I'll give you context why I'm asking this, because I can tell a lot on the strategies you would want to deploy, even for knocking strategy versus how you talk to people specifically. We can go really micro or we can go as broad as you want, depending on home value. And that's actually going to be a consistent marker of how to treat your market approach. So where you go knock in each area is really home value and oftentimes property taxes, because in Denver, for example, you'd have 1,200 square foot homes that were $1.2 million and the property taxes were so high, even though those people that originally bought those homes could easily afford them, they had risen in value so much and the property taxes were so high that everyone that couldn't afford to live in that dumpy of a home had already moved out. It really is a good indicator. You could go look at net worth statistics. We used to pull reporting that would show us general good guesses of income, which that's your best one. If you can know the average income per household, that's ideal. Honestly, home value is the easiest one. You're saying
higher end.
Do you ever knock anything more expensive than that?
I have, and I've seen more success in the more expensive one than when I go down.
What makes you decide to knock a door versus not? Do you skip or do you just go house by house?
They've pretty much taught us 4 doors per street, or only knocking the good looks, looking for signs of life. I would say I walk more than I knock in a good way. Say I have 2 streets, I'll walk those 2 streets 2 times over, only hit the good looks, because the second time around, there's different homes that look different, that have different people home, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Totally. And is that a good indicator of someone actually being home? If you knock signs of life, or how hit and miss is it?
I mean, I think it's more so of the homes that look home. There's usually somebody there. Even if they don't answer, like I can hear somebody, like I know somebody's there.
So you're giving yourself a better look in your mind for sure with the signs of life. I'm asking because there's some areas where that's not the case.
Really? Okay, yeah.
It depends on the country, on what part of the country really I found. But like in Texas, there'd be entire neighborhoods that were really nice that had the garages in the back. So you couldn't actually tell, like a significant sign of life is if a garage is open. If you can see a car in the driveway, but if the driveway's in the back, you can't see that. So what do? Like that takes away one really big indicator of signs of life. So the best way to have the highest opportunity of getting people home is just knocking every door.
Yeah, that's true. I would say other ones is like if it like very pristine home, this might just be a me thing. Like you can kind of tell when it's a grandma or like an older person. Mm-hmm. Like old people are probably not going to park it in the driveway. So if there's no oil stains, no tire marks, nothing on the driveway itself, it's like they're probably inside, probably stay inside majority of the time. Mm-hmm, so I'm like straight to that. I love the grandmas.
Is there, on that note, is there a certain type of person that you prefer to sell to?
Old women.
Really?
Love it.
Really?
Yeah.
Some people, a lot of sales reps I know would say the exact opposite.
I don't know.
They just like hate selling to the elderly.
Out of my 15, like 7 or 8 have been older women.
Nice.
Maybe like older couples, but like I first initially connect with the older woman.
You're able to connect with the elderly woman. Okay. Is there a demographic of people that you legitimately feel like you struggle selling to? It's really good to assess where your strengths and weaknesses are, literally just based on what you prefer, because that's going to tell you where a weakness is. If you prefer selling to elderly couples or something like that, and they're in nice homes, that tells you what a strength of yours is. My opinion on this is like, you could lean into your strengths and probably sell 20% better, but you can have a significant increase in sales if you just learn how to sell to demographics that other people don't prefer to sell to. It's not as hard as you would think, actually, because you think it takes a whole different strategy. You're like, what objection do I need to learn how to overcome? Or how do I negotiate better? And then you're in your head, you have to memorize what to do for every type of person that you're going to talk to. And that's honestly, it's exhausting, but more importantly, for like from a production standpoint, it's completely unnecessary. The way I would look at this if I were you is it starts with your mindset. It starts with your mindset in a specific area, which is your belief systems and your unwillingness to accept that you can't produce in every area that you go to. Now, I recognize that there could be constraints, like in some of our markets that I own branches in, we had legitimate HOA problems in almost every neighborhood that we knocked in. And we were a high-end provider, so the wealthier the demographic, the worse that got because they cared more about their properties. And so their HOAs usually were a bit more easy to kick out door-to-door salesmen. And not only that, you had like entire groups or even cities that were like kind of in cahoots with law enforcement and not actually enforcing laws, but kicking us out. And even if we had permits. So that's a legitimate constraint. What's not a legitimate constraint is think about this, dude, it's like if you choose to not sell to a certain demographic because you don't like the words that they say back to you. That's literally all it is, how they respond to you. And so basically what you're telling your mind subconsciously is, if I skip certain houses because I know the indicators on that house would tell me that they're from a specific region in the world, I'm just going to give myself the best look, right? That's typically what salesmen will say. That's why I skip those. I think your biggest opportunity lies there, but it's not because you need to learn a new skill. It's because everybody's objections are fundamentally just the same thing they're saying anyway. Yeah, someone might have a tendency to want to negotiate with you more, and that might be a reality consistently, but all of the customers that you sell to anyway have some version of that they never actually give you because you're so much more confident selling to them. I went out my rookie year and knocked with this guy who was like very good. He was incredible. And when people would work with him, especially those reps that had really heavy limiting beliefs, they would be like, yeah, he just is lucky. Like he's better looking, so he sells better. Nobody tells him no. He doesn't get the same objections that I get. So how could I ever learn from him? Because I get way different objections than him. Well, salesmen draw out their own objections. So these salesmen that would complain about this guy, they were right only because they made themselves right, because the things they were doing early on in the sale were making it so that they got all the objections that they ended up getting. So your objections become like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think price is what the customer is going to pay for price, or the hassle they have to go through to get approved or qualified, or how long it's going to take for the install to occur. If that's something in your mind that would be a deterrent for you personally to buy it, and therefore makes you unconfident about selling it, you're going to get that objection all day long. So if you look at your entire office, you'll find every single person will have an objection that they get that's their common objection that's different than everyone else's. It's because they draw out their own objections. How this happens is first a mindset thing. It's a belief thing. And you have to be unwilling to accept that you can't sell at a high level in every single area that you walk into. It sounds like overly simple. It's like, no, hey, like, what's the real thing? No, that has to be the first thing. Your unwillingness to settle for not being able to sell a certain demographic is the very first thing that you need, because then what that does is it makes it so that when you're on a doorstep and you're applying a new principle and you're trying to learn how to speak differently to that type of person or meet them in their world or whatever, you need in your mind this unwillingness to leave the doorstep without actually trying everything in your tool belt. But if you don't have that like unrelenting, like, I will sell to this person because I know that everyone needs this, because I'm unwilling to not achieve the highest version of my goals. If that's not the first thing in your mind, you're not even going to push yourself far enough to know what you're capable of. And that happens on a door-to-door level. That happens on a person-to-person, customer-to-customer interaction level. But it also happens just on the macro of like your sales season. It would really bother me when sales reps lower their goals because of their own limiting beliefs.
The videos you sent me, that was like, if you were the perfect salesman, like that helped me a lot, like really changed my perspective. As like somebody, like lots of people started here in February. We came out for just the summer, like end of, what did I say? April, May?
Yeah.
Already like catching up to some people and passing people that have been out since February, like feels good. But like at the same time, there's people doing 6, 7, 8 closes in a week, 13 even, not our team.
And what are you doing right now? 2, 4?
2 to 4.
Okay. And like, how many are you setting?
Anywhere from 2 to 4 a day. Once
you establish the mindset thing, now you want to get into and get extremely technical and very unemotional about your analysis of your own performance. So what I would do is draw out a pipeline for yourself. Basically, this is like some people call this deal flow. I would always call it pipeline. What do your stats actually look like at a granular level? So do you know, for example, how many doors you knock a day?
Close to 90.
Is it actually 90? Like, do you know for sure that that's the case?
I would say on the days that I'm getting 4 sets, that's going to go down because my conversations are a little bit longer. I don't like tracking doors. I like tracking conversations. So like I would say around every 10 conversations had, I can get a bill and get a set.
The biggest pipeline you need to look at is like, what are your effort inputs versus your outcome inputs? So I like to organize this from, because like you can control your effort. So you logistically could control how many doors you knock a day. There's only like maybe one variable that would change how many doors you'd be able to knock a day. And that would be like the distance between each house. So it's like physics is going to be the only thing that makes that kind of outside of your control, if that makes sense. But if you wanted to, you could go knock 100 doors a day and you could hit that perfectly every day. So that I would consider that some sort of an effort input. So we want to work from, this is like called your circle of control. We want to work from within our circle of control first and then broaden out to your circle of influence. That's like how we look at this from the pipeline, the deal flow perspective. So every stage of your funnel, it's all the inputs, the numbers that would tell you how you could improve your training actually. So essentially, McKay, what I'm giving you is a way to improve your training without having anyone actually be really that good at training you. You can lead, you can guide self-guide your own training, but you have to get granular about your stats. So you can get too granular and it take too much time, but doors knocked is for sure one thing that you want to add on there because that's something you can control. Then the next one I would do is decision makers. And this is going to be a little subjective. Sometimes people answer the door right and you don't know if they're actually a decision maker, but they very well might be. So it's what you think is the decision maker. That's before we even get to conversations. Because what we want to know is for every door that I knock, how many people open the door and entertain the idea of talking to me? Then from there, you don't think conversations, think how many times am I able to give my initial pitch to them. So that's everything that I say about the sale before they interact back to me. So like saying, hey, what's up? That's not the whole thing. And then they talk, don't count that. That would be like your greeting. I usually section up my sales flow, the actual script into the greeting first and then the introduction. So the greeting is everything I'm doing right before I actually say, hey, and introduce myself and say what I'm actually doing there. Doors knocked, decision makers talked to, and then instead of conversations, just try switching it to introductions, like complete introductions given. And you can call it whatever you want. You can say pitches, intros. It's just, but you get my point there, right?
I do the counter app.
Counter's great. Ideally, a software would track this for you, but a counter is great.
NZ kind of does it, but it's like
it's clunky because they have so many different industries. So I know the NZ guys. We worked with them pretty close. I personally worked with them closely to build out some of their original frameworks for tournaments. You might be doing tournaments that I actually may or may not have had contributed significantly in building. Yes. If you care about your stats, which you should, counting is a low effort task that will yield high results. So doors, decision makers, introductions completed. So if you attempted the introduction, that just is a decision maker. But if you actually got through the introduction, that's a complete intro. That's really before they close the door. It's important to define these things too, because you want to be able to work within your stats to tweak and manipulate the training inputs that go into those each stage of your deal flow. So I'll give you an example about this. So like if I have, like, how many decision makers do you talk to? And is that what you're counting as conversations right now? Or if they open the door, you see someone, they close the door, what do you count that as? Anything?
No. So like conversations is where I've counted it as like getting to the bill. Like as when I get to I pretty much complete my intro and begin to ask them questions about their bill, kind of like figure out the situation. That's when I get to the bill is when I count it as like a qualified conversation.
That stage, bill, that's what you guys would refer to that as. Like, it's when you're getting to the next part of the sell. Well, all teams have these like lingos too that they use that kind of, but they're really all indicators of like where you're at in the sale, right? We would say I got to price with them, but that became a lingo term because I was so obsessive about the deal flow that price was one of the steps in the deal flow, in the stages of how far you were getting with people, which could give you indications on what to train on. So we'll actually do this together. We'll look at it and just section it up in a way that won't make you have to do anything like high effort to change it. You're far into your season. You don't want to change a lot right now. Hence why we're going to go like more macro. And then I'll give you a couple small tips that are low effort, but like high reward with what you recorded for me, your pitches. Okay. So after introductions, what would be the equivalent of price for you guys? It might be bill actually.
Yeah. For an example, introduction, we tell them the problem of the rates going up or the delivery fees for the power.
Okay.
And then try to build pain on that, help them to agree. And then we give them the solution of the new PPA program.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Free installation. You just buy your power from your roof. And then at that point, a pullback. And then buy your
power from your roof. I love how you're positioning this to me in my mind right now.
Yeah. It's like, and then super simple, a transition to the question of, do you get that bill online or in the mail?
Okay.
And then after that, we're like, go grab that. I'll show you something.
Okay. What are you doing after you get the bill in an ideal sale?
After I get the bill, I re-explain what they're paying for the price for their rate.
Okay.
Like, how long have you been paying?
So you are actually in a pricing conversation then?
Yeah. Like, how long have you been paying 50 cents per kilowatt? Do you remember when they raised it last time? No. Okay. Yeah. And then I won't answer it and I won't tell them like when they raised it. And do you remember when they added on these shipping fees? Oh yeah. Like a third of your bill is just to get the power to your house.
We might still call this price. You can call it whatever you want, but bill is different. You may want to add bill in there as one of the steps that you would calculate. You would look at like how far am I actually getting? Because if you're okay with tracking all of these stages, the more detailed the tracking is, the easier it is to know what to work on in your own sales training.
I don't think I have a problem because like I said, I'm giving myself a minute or two to kind of reassess after each door after the fact anyways, because while looking for the next good look.
Yeah. It's like any of the like fine details of how to be more persuasive generally, like while you're talking to people, they will become important, but they're not as important as your mindset and your frameworks for how you operate on the day, on a day-to-day basis. One that I used to have guys track a lot that is above doors. Really the highest control that you have is how many hours you're out selling consistently. So I would keep that in mind too. And then how many breaks you have during the day, because you might think that if you guys have to move area, that it costs you whatever time it takes to do that, but it really costs you about triple the time because you're disconnected from like when you get the call that you have to move area to the time that you actually do. And then when you get into the new area, get warming up, like you underestimate how much that like focus shift is actually costing in my experience.
I agree. That was a crappy feeling yesterday.
Yeah, I'd track hours worked as well, just to like, it'll give you a really, because here's what you want from this. So if you were a sophisticated company yourself and you wanted to optimize, so if you wanted to solve for the ability to actually control your outcomes predictably, you would have to track everything meticulously so that you know what to adjust. It's a fairly obvious thing when you think about it. Like if you're running a company or probably as a missionary, you're dialed in this. Missionaries that care about like the stages of progression for people are going to be far more successful than those that don't, just because logistically speaking, you now know what to improve upon. That's the importance of it, just to reiterate. But so far I've got hours, doors, decision makers, introductions completed, bill, price, and then let's just rewind for a second.
So you've heard of bills is my bills like when I start asking them about the bill?
So each of these stages would be like either an attempt or like you've completed it. You've actually gotten through that stage. Each of these stages should be you completed the stage. So you can think of it like a checkpoint that you have to go through. And if you went through the checkpoint, so if you successfully got them to, well, walk me through again what you do for bill real fast.
I get to asking them like how much they're paying on their bill.
Okay.
If they get that online or in the mail, like pretty much right before I start transitioning to tell them to go get the bill.
Okay, so that would be a more of a transition, like a bridge between your introduction and bill. And then they go get it, they come back, then what do you do?
Just explain to them super quick, like how much they're paying. Connect the problem that I said earlier of you've seen all the rate increases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you've seen how expensive it's getting, right? Like,
where in your mind, where are you taking the customer next?
Where am I taking them next?
Yeah, what's your objective for them right like after you get through or after they come back with the bill?
I'm rebuilding the pain. I'm connecting the problem to them. Mm-hmm. Like I'm making sure that they understand that the problem is their problem, not just a problem that I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
So I'm like, you are paying 60 cents per kilowatt and 1/3 of your bill is to get your power to your door.
Dude, McKay, what I would do here actually is if they come back with the bill, you've taken them through that checkpoint. Whether you do much with it after is not as important though, because from my perspective, if a customer does something that you ask them to do, it tells you that's a lot of data that you can work with. That piece of data is really important because that means that you have trust, initial trust at least. That means that you have rapport. And that also means that you could reasonably assume that they are intrigued by what you're going to say next. Yeah. So you've gotten them through 3 checkpoints that are pivotal. And dude, so like if I'm in your shoes and someone does something for me that I asked them to do and they come back with that thing, and especially if it's a piece of personal information, I'm going to close that deal every time because I just know that everything left for me to do is a skills thing. It's just skills and running the play. And even if they give me objections, I already know that they at least are intrigued. So their objections now I think about a bit differently because someone who's intrigued will give you an objection for a different reason. You handle those objections differently than you handle a smoke screen. If someone's not intrigued, they're throwing you off the scent. They're trying to confuse you. They're trying to get you to bite on the smoke screen so that they can either objection hop is what people call this, or they can just move to something else and see what you'll bite on. Or if you bite on it, they'll dig down. If you bite on the smoke screen, they'll dig their heels in. So you want to think about before you get to bill, everything is a smoke screen. You can just assume that when they're giving you like what seem to be objections, don't handle them the same way as after. And we can talk about that as much as you want, but I'm mostly just pointing out that I think how you would want to define this, because it's important that you define each stage of your sale specifically so that you know what to count. And for me, if you successfully accomplish the fact that you asked them to get you a piece of personal information and they came back and they actually got it, count that as a stage. Now, the next one I would count is actually price, although you do things between talking about price. But again, let's keep walking me through. You're basically framing value is from what I understand, right? So you're going more of the problem solution framework of framing value in their mind.
Yeah. So simply trying to, it's like 30 seconds, just try to make the problem, connect the problem to them personally.
Yep.
And then at that point, this is the graph. We use this information to create the actual design specific to your home, just so we can give you the apples to apples.
Are you running that play on every person you talk to that brings the bill back?
Yeah, because we do. So we take a picture of the bill and that's what we use to make the design, and then the closer comes back with the design.
But you're never deviating from that script of posing, of framing the problem or exemplifying the problem.
What problem?
Exactly. Like you're always going to try to pull out an issue that your solution, solar and install, would solve.
Yeah, it's not always the price. Sometimes it's power. Like they don't have, they're having power outages. Sometimes it's the fact that its rate increases. So this is a fixed rate. So like whatever the problem is, by asking them the questions, that's what I'm going to re-hit when I have the bill.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking this is because I'm trying to gauge what you do consistently when you have certain triggers within the sale. Those very well may be things you want to track, actually. If you're down to get really detailed, when I was really getting good at personally, when I was like top 5 to 1% in just individual sales, and this is while I was managing 100 plus, like I had a team of 100 plus people when I was probably top 1% in the industry in production, in personal production, like probably top 0.1% of in the industry in team production and in total production across all my teams. But I was obsessive with the stages. My point is, if you do it consistently after something is triggered in the sale, so a trigger would be getting the bill, bringing it back. If you always do something consistently after that, then it's worth considering tracking. The only reason I'm not going as detailed as that on every single stage is because you can get too granular with it. It's only as useful to you as you do it consistently on every door or every interaction. From your perspective, what are you doing every single time after somebody gets the bill? Like, and this is specific questions you might ask.
I would say when they give me the bill, we've already gone over the price one, and I would actually so you know how I tell them the problem, right, of in general rate increases, you get them to agree with me that the prices have made it crazy.
Yeah.
I re-explain that when I have the bill.
Okay.
I would go back one step, and again, this is prior to even getting the bill, explain why I need the bill.
Okay.
It was something that I would do. And then once again, I would explain it again when I have the bill.
Okay. Why
I'm taking a picture of the bill or what it does. So like beforehand, I would be like, yeah, that's why we look at the bill, is to see how much power you're using. Because if we can't produce the same amount of power on your roof, why would we do it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. If I'm you writing this script for myself or dissecting what I do on the doors, I'm probably not going to count that as a stage, what you do after the bill, because although that is a significant stage, you're essentially, now you're in the value equation. Value is always a function of energy in, benefits out. So how much energy do they have to put into this transaction versus the benefits that they can see out of the transaction? And that's where you get problem solution is really just an energy in, benefits out framing. If I can frame a problem in somebody's mind that's legitimate, then what I'm telling them is, by me solving this problem, that's a huge benefit to a customer, is the solve of the problem. But that's still not putting in, I haven't put this input of like, how much is this going to cost me yet? The energy part of the equation is, what do they have to do in order to get those benefits? And do they see that as small enough versus the benefits that they get? I'm curious next though, is like, when do you get into the ask? Like, what does that look like?
The objective is to get the bill and to set the appointment. So once I have the bill, I'm like, okay, my engineer's in the area today. You're not doing anything for the next hour, right?
Okay.
Or try to, like, obviously the soonest the better. Or if the schedule is for tomorrow, be like, okay, would this time or this time be better for you?
And is the customer making that decision based off of anything pricing related?
No, we just tell them, if we can't save you at least 30% of what you're paying, I'll just text you a thumbs down.
Oh, they are actually then. I would look at this as something related to the price they have to pay to get the final benefit.
So that's a part of the pitch, is there is no upfront cost for solar now.
No, I get that, but that's still pricing though, because you're actually framing to them that there is no upfront cost for it. Because you have to assume that in the customer's mind, and I might be just being really redundant with this, and I know it's super obvious, but when I'm looking at a sales system, which the best salesmen ever are they run the best systems. And especially if you scale up to teams, this becomes even more important. If I'm looking at like what the ideal sales system is, I want to know based on what I'm asking them to do. So the ask is actually the set, because you can't move on to the next stage and actually closing the deal and having a legitimate transaction without them setting the appointment. That's what you want to look at as your close. This is your guys' sale would be more of like a 2-call close. So you have to have 2 interactions in order to actually close the deal. It's more of like 3 because installs take so freaking long, usually compared to like, same day stuff. But my point is, in the customer's mind, they might know everyone might know that it's free, so to speak. That's still a price. And there's still something that they are doing to get the benefits that you're framing. Whatever that conversation looks like with framing the cost to them, I would for sure count that as a stage. It's going to increase the quality of your leads if you can think about this as a stage. You'll decrease your drop-off rate if you can look at this as a stage. That's where we can really play around with how do we get more people to close.
I guess I'm not super understanding because
from the beginning, we're talking about price from like the get-go. I'm hitting like kind of like when you're teaching a lesson about the gospel, like you're talking about baptism in every step. Sure. I'm talking about baptism when I'm teaching you faith. And so that when I hit baptism, it's normal.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I'm talking about the price in every step. So like, I guess, what do you mean? Like how is pricing a step if I'm like mentioning it throughout the entire conversation?
So the way that I would look at this is your sales script, it might only be slightly different, but it is different than the funnel, the system that you use to track how far a customer is along. In that case, you would want to understand when the last piece of information that you give them that's pricing related is. And I'm only using the word price because energy out, like that equation. Do you get what I mean when I say it benefits energy in, benefits out?
Yeah. Like the energy that they put in versus the benefits that they will get for doing that.
Right. And that may or may not be price related, but that's actually still what you're doing is you're finishing off the energy in benefits out equation before you actually get into the close. So when you ask for the set, you ask for the appointment or whatever lingo you might use for that, that's going to be a stage of the close that is different than I just finished talking about the energy and benefits out. So you might intersperse that throughout the entire pitch and your interaction with the customer, but you still have to close that out in order to even ask for the sale successfully. If you don't know in your mind when you've closed out we're done talking about pricing now and I've framed properly all the benefits for you, if you don't know when that ends before you start the ask, you can't improve your fall off rate. Because what's going to happen is a huge reason why people fall off from actually getting funded, or in your guys' case, from taking the next appointment, is simply because they actually are confused about this equation. They don't really know what it takes to get the benefits for themselves. So at the very least, it's going to qualify a few more people. And honestly, dude, maybe you have like 1 or 2 people less a day that you set appointments with. But if you can view this as you're closing out a stage of the sale that makes a higher likelihood for them to actually take the next appointment and get funded or get their install, then that's just going to be really useful for you. And it lets you work within the skill set, because now I can predictably say, well, I kind of suck at reiterating what the cost benefit analysis is for the person in their mind, which would make it more likely for me to predict who's falling off and who's not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's starting to.
Tell me what you understand by that, and I'll explain a bit further.
So it sounds like, if I understood correctly, are you saying that I should finish explaining about the money situation for them before I ask?
Okay, so I know this is so redundant, but good sales trainers just ask a lot of questions. And then you do.
I don't think it's redundant because I'm still confused. So don't even try.
No. And it's super helpful once we get it. But you got to go here in a second, huh?
I got like 5 minutes.
Cut me off when you need to go. I'll try to be very quick with this. So let me back up a little bit. Change as little as possible right now, but I just want you to try to pay attention to how well the customer understands what they are doing to get the benefits they think they're getting.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because now we're not on sales process right now, because we'll just back up for a second and look at that. We might not even have the price thing as a stage right now. It'll be a little bit too muddy.
Yeah. So let me tell you, what if I tell you what I say?
Yeah, go for it. That'll be the most helpful.
So essentially, the panels are seen as utility equipment, like the poles or the lines up there.
Okay.
If that breaks down or the power goes out, do you go up and fix it? No. Okay. And when they go up and fix it, do you pay them anything out of pocket? No.
Okay.
The panels are the same way. There's no upfront costs to install them.
This is totally a price conversation, is how I would view it. We'll call it something different though. Keep going.
We still own them, maintain them, and are responsible for them. You simply buy your power from your roof, bypassing all the shipping fees.
Yep.
And
This is,
hopefully, fingers crossed, at a much cheaper rate.
man, you'd think I'd worked with a couple thousand sales reps and watched 100,000 pitches before. This is exactly what I would refer to as price, but I think we should call it something differently. What do you call this? Anything? But you do it every time?
Try to.
Yeah, because you have to, or else the person's not going to take the appointment, right?
Yeah, they're not going to know what they're doing.
Yeah. So, okay, here's what I'm really pointing out, McKay, is like instinctually, if you want the person to take the appointment, do you not have to have that conversation?
Technically, no. Like I've gotten appointments where they don't know that it's even solar. Like we take your bill from up here to down here. Let me see your bill.
Yeah, but that's because they just have a low buying threshold. And they're probably not going to be great customers or get funded anyway.
So the ones that actually end up closing, yes, they know it's solar. They have an idea that they're going to save 30 to 50%.
Yep.
If not. And if like I see their bill and I'm like, oh, you're not paying a ton, I'll reframe it like, we might not be able to save you a ton of money, but keep in mind, you're still buying your power.
Okay, dude,
all this stuff.
I'm pointing out too that your instincts are on point, because like any person that actually wants to freaking sell and isn't just out there to throw up numbers and pretend they're doing work, which you see sometimes, you have to instinctually have the person understand these things, because they're just not going to take the next appointment if they don't. And then you're making yourself feel good about yourself and then setting yourself up for disappointment because they didn't actually follow through. But you knew they wouldn't follow through because you're kind of like, I kind of didn't really say this and I don't think they really know, but at least I got it on the boards. You know, like we're good. Okay, so what do you want to call this though? Reframe? I think you should do this on every sale deliberately, although you probably already honestly do. But
let's call it the PPA, like just like explaining the PPA,
okay,
like clearly and like that step.
That takes the place of what I would have guys do with price. You see how that's an important checkpoint that you would want to make sure you get to, which would give you a higher likelihood of closing.
Yes.
And it also would help you understand what's my ratio. How many people do I get there that get the set appointment and they follow through versus how many people do I just get to the bill, they still set, but they don't follow through. And then if you really wanted to, McKay, you could track 3 objections after PPA. I would for sure not leave unless they give you a no 3 times after that, at the very least. But that's a useful piece of data too, because it tells you how good your PPA was. Last thing before you go, if you look at every stage here, what you know to train on is always going to be the stage before you have the number drop off. So if I have 90 doors knocked, if I talk to 30 decision makers, if I give 17 introductions, and then I only get to bill with 2 people, what am I training on now? 90 doors knocked, 30 decision makers talked to, 17 full introductions given, completed, but I only get to the bill with 2 people.
Oh, the intro.
Yep. You're training on the intro because that's where things are going wrong. You might even want to be training on your greeting because you didn't even have those people's trust to begin with. That's just a piece of useful information because you think that the problem is the objection that you're getting when you ask for the bill, but that's not the problem. The problem is they don't trust you. So that's why you train on your introduction on that first like 4 to 7 seconds. I'd have guys, they'd be like, hey, how do I overcome this certain objection? Always, this is what the common question was, insert any objection. Just teach me how to do this. If I could overcome this objection, I would sell. I wouldn't go to the objection because I just knew that they were losing trust in the introduction. And if you can increase your likelihood of talking to more people that have trust with you, then you automatically increase your sales rate.
Yeah, facts.
How's that for today? I want you to send me your stats on this. Like if you can, send them to me every day.
Got you.
And I'll help you see what to focus on. And plus the recordings, that's going to be ideal. I'll know exactly what we need to do. We can increase your close rate by a pretty significant amount.
And another thing is like there's a notice pitch is like, hey, did you get this notice from PG&E? No, it's just about what they're doing in the high usage areas. Like it just buys you more time because they're like a little bit more confused. But like this one is way more simple to me. It's just for lack of time. I hate that pitch. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't like it. Why don't you like it though? Let's see what kind of man you are, McKay. Doesn't feel super clean. It's not honest. That's why, dude. It's freaking not honest. So anytime you're like, hey, you're not actually, this isn't a sale. I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's like, yeah, you are. It just is free. Even if it's actually free, you're still trying to sell something to them because they're still paying a price for it. If people in your office are doing that, don't fall into the trap of like small truths that are actually not true and look at it fundamentally. So yeah, maybe they don't pay something, whatever. Maybe you're just setting an appointment, but they're in a sale and everyone knows that they're in a sale. And so if customer says yes to that, first of all, what type of customer would say yes to that? Probably a customer that's less likely to go through with the transaction because they're okay with being lied to on a micro level. I don't mean that in like a big way, just small, but the type of person that's really going to respect you
and you'll close these other people as well, is if you're just more straight up and you really focus on that charisma in your first 4 to 7 seconds of the interaction. It's like, hey, I know everyone out here is saying like, hey, can you go get me your bill? I don't want to do that. I'm doing solar. That's what I'm doing. I mean, you already know this, right? You've probably seen people around. We have a lot of new customers out here. The biggest reason why is because that's what I would do. Something along those lines. Extreme, very upfront. Again, don't change a ton from what you're doing, but just really dial in that, like, look at it holistically and say, am I being totally honest about what this person is doing versus what I'm saying they're doing?
Yeah, for sure. That's like another reason why we kind of canvas more. It's like when other people see us walking around not knocking on their home, like almost subconsciously, like, why isn't he knocking on my door? Door to door to door to door to door to door. It's like they see me, they're like, oh, he's gonna come knock on my door. It's like, because it really is qualification based. Like,
dude, none of that matters.
Okay.
If you want to be a real baller, don't change a ton about what you're doing. It's best to not be abrupt in the changes, be gradual. If you want to really ball out, knock every door and be relentless, unwilling to accept that you can't sell every person that you talk to. And that mindset alone will make you sell better. The best sales I ever had is when I did the exact opposite of what everyone in the industry said. And I taught my teams to do this. Everyone said you hop neighborhoods, you go to use Redfin or Zillow, new move-ins, all this garbage that's really just a mask for limiting beliefs and weakness. So what you really want to do is you want to do the opposite. You want to stay in areas longer. You want to talk to every person. You want to be the neighborhood's favorite person that goes to their door. You don't care what people think as you're knocking. All of that's irrelevant because you don't actually know what they think. And so it's not useful data. The only thing that's useful is your voice when talking to the person. That makes the difference, not anything else.
Bang.
But that starts with your mind though.
Bet.
I'll lock in. I'm going to spend the next hour just repeating that.
Let's go.
I want to, like, obviously solar isn't going to last forever. Like,
the stuff we'll talk about, you can use in every job you do forever, especially business that you own.
And bro, coolest thing ever is I'm noticing like more than like, cause school's pretty easy to me. Other things are kind of easy, but like this job like makes me very dependent and on God. Like I pray a lot more.
Yep.
In this job versus it's like similar to the mission in that way.
That's how I approached it. It's like the things that push you to your limits are the things that make you, one, it makes you a better person because you actually have to level up your skill set, but it also does make you reliant on he who gives prosperity, which is God. That's why it's ever more important to be extremely vigilant about how honest you are with people. If you're going to do this relying on God, then absolutely make sure that you are hyper vigilant about your integrity. And the way you know you're being hyper vigilant about your integrity is if you're worried about it. If you're not worried about it, that's bad news, dude.
That's fact. Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying this the same way I would say it to a brother, like because I really care about it and because we all should, but it's also a mark of a real man, I guess. I don't know.
100%.
Kill it, bro.
I appreciate you, bro.
So many people pretend that they're relying on God when they're just willing to throw away their integrity for tiny shiz. And what that looks like in solar is a set appointment that has like a 5% chance of getting funded. So they're not even making money off of lying. No, but that's sales, period. It's not just solar, unfortunately, which is why I feel like if we're going to be in sales training, higher end sales consulting, that attitude, I will not work with people if they don't accept that attitude. Yeah, I refuse to help them. I love being able to customize this too, because it's such a sign of expertise if you have to ask questions. If people aren't willing to ask questions and assume that they don't know the full process well, you just already know that they don't know very much. If I'm willing to say like, hey, of course, I'm not in your exact business. And like, I even want to try to customize it per his team, because if his team uses a different word than pricing, for example, which they did, but did you see that? How they're doing pricing? Like they're doing whatever that stage is that we called price, but it's still the same fundamental thing that has to happen, which is the customer has to actually finally agree, or you have to see that there is agreement in the understanding of what they're committing to, at least next, before you ask them to commit to it. And if you don't have a process for that, you don't know who's actually committed. And so you might set appointments. What you'd find is that people will they will take the appointment or they'll take the sale. They'll say yes, but they literally just do it to get you to go away. And that is called not a sale. You can call that whatever you want, but it's not a sale. When I first started implementing protocols where you would meticulously track the stages of your sales process, personally, I found a lot of resistance from it, which is understandable because it's another task to do when sales is already extremely challenging if you're trying to perform at a high level, especially cold calling, but any sales in general. And if it's not that hard, that means that you're underperforming significantly because it should push you to the brinks of your capabilities and of your mental acuity. You get resistance from these things because it's a lot to remember. If you're already in a flow and you're a high performer or reasonably high performer, or maybe you're not even that high of a performer, but you make more money than you would in any other job. So you're kind of just coasting in your current job. You're still underperforming your capabilities, because if you don't have a process to track all of the stages of what you do as a system, you can never replicate that system. So this is why we were able to replicate our systems across multiple locations, multiple different types of customer bases. Every area across the country is different, let alone every neighborhood within the areas where we sold. If you don't have a system, you don't know what to train on. You don't know how to focus your efforts on the highest priority training principles that are actually losing you the deal. The conclusion I would draw from this, if someone is not willing to track their numbers, to track the meticulous stages of their sales flow, they don't actually want to sell more. They just want to pretend that they are okay at selling, get a couple wins in inputs, like they set an appointment, or they get to the next stage of the deal flow, or maybe even they make the sale, but it doesn't end up getting funded or serviced or whatever you call that, which that still means you're not making any money. That still means you didn't actually get the sale, but you felt good about it in the meantime so that you could look good in front of your team, or you could meet the company standard or whatever that is, which usually means the companies aren't tracking these things properly because they're putting their focus on inputs that don't actually lead to the optimal outputs, or they're not far enough in the deal flow chain. These inputs, if they're not far enough in the deal, close to the customer actually making the decision and funding the sale, then it's not the ideal metric to track as your highest success metric, your highest priority success metric. But all the inputs that go in before the funding of the deal, when a customer makes the transaction, all of those inputs should be stages of the sale so that you can track what's happening and you can look at meticulously, where am I failing in the sale so that I know where to focus my efforts on improvement. And if someone is not willing to do that, they don't want to improve, which really means they don't care. They don't want to actually sell, which in my mind is like, what are you doing then? Why are you doing the job if you don't actually want to get sales? It's a little hardcore, but not really, because you signed up for the job. So why aren't you doing the job? You signed up for the job. Why? Because you wanted to make a little bit more than you make in your other job? Or I don't even know. Why do people do sales? If it's not to get more sales, if it's not to actually convince people to buy a product, good or service, and do it at the highest level, then you really should just go do something more stable, because you're probably making less money than you can make at a very stable corporate job. My name is Hayden Schaap. No, really, my name is Hayden Schaap. And the only reason, I'm decent at sales at best. No, there are people that produce more than me in sales. I'm sure there have to be. I just don't know them. That's something Jason would say. Listen, I'm willing to accept that there are people who are better at understanding the fine metrics and dynamics of what it takes to perform in sales teams at a high level. I'm not just talking about like you might close more deals than the next guy. I'm talking about, can you scale your systems across yourself, which is the first priority? And then can you scale those systems across every day that you are selling, which is priority number 2? Because if you can do something consistently for a small period of time, but that will not yield nearly the quantity of results as if you scaled that across every day, all day. It's just habit built into your system, meticulously looking at your performance and making tweaks and adjustments based on it that are accurate and that are useful and outweigh the effort you have to put into them significantly, the results. Scaling it across teams and across the country and multiple markets, multiple types of demographics and multiple use cases or layers to a product or good or service. If you can scale it across that big, broad of application set, that's how you know you're a baller at sales. And that system, and at least in the industry that I just came from in the door-to-door space, I'm sure there are people who might be decent at this, and it's obvious that you need systems. Everybody talks about this. Yeah, you know, the one way to scale, you don't even have a business if you don't have systems. Well, duh, it's not called a business if you don't have systems, of course. But the quality of those systems, not everybody's systems quality is created equal. And when it comes to sales training and sales processes, in the broad experience that I have of using softwares, looking at deal flows, understanding pipeline, understanding the difference between when does marketing end and sales begin, at least in the space that I was in and the success that we had, and what I've seen helping some of my friends over the years that are outside of our space, that our processes worked very well, just in conversations, giving them advice and so forth. If there is someone who's better at this, I just haven't met them, and I would love to meet them, because we probably become friends over the fact that everybody's systems are pretty suboptimal. So I was in sales for 12 years before I started my business now that I'm doing sales training and sales consulting. The biggest lesson that I learned is that most of the time, the better the sales rep you are, the worse manager you become, because you don't know how to scale your own processes. But those good sales reps who can make their processes competent and conscious can scale themselves infinitely. And that is a much bigger paycheck than if you can't do that. You just got to replicate yourself. I'm just in the process. I'm at the stage where I'm just trying to replicate myself. myself. Okay, so how many doors did everybody knock last week? What was your average per day? Tell me your door to decision maker ratio. What about decision maker to price ratio? What about, not let alone, how many times do your sales reps get past 3 objections? Man, I don't know. I just have to ask. Well, if you have to ask, then you're not doing it and you don't know it. If you don't know it off the top of your head, how are you supposed to make a training decision tomorrow? The metrics are different every single day for your team. So how do I know what to train on tomorrow if I don't know the fine metrics and details of my sales team today? And if those metrics aren't useful as inputs to understand where I can focus my efforts on training people the best, most accurately, so that it gets them results tomorrow based on the thing we train on today. You can't do it. It's impossible. At the end of the day, if you're not willing to track the things that you do meticulously or should do on every door, every sale, with every customer, in every appointment, you can't cry about not getting the results you want because you're not willing to look at what the facts are, or you just don't know and don't care enough to be a top performer, which is also actually fine. But if you want to be a top performer, this is mandatory, essentially. Well, you can still be a top performer and it not be mandatory just off of tenacity. But if you want to scale outside of yourself in any reasonable degree, you have to know the stages of your sale that lead to the highest quality outcomes. And usually that not always means getting the sale, but at the end of the day, that's the furthest down the pipeline metric. The metrics that come before that as your greatest effort inputs that you actually control to the least controlled inputs that are a bit more up to chance, but still give you good training data. So for example, like focusing with McKay on how many hours is he working. McKay's a hard worker. He's going to be working hours, but everybody works a little bit less than they think that they do. And if you take breaks without a long enough period of time consistently calling on customers, consistently in meetings, consistently in appointments, you might think that your line is in the water fishing when really you're just on the lake and have been messing around doing nothing and have no real quality time of giving yourself a chance to get any bites. Understanding how long you are working consistently, how many consistent hours you're working without a break is important, because now we're in a cost of focus problem. If I only work a half hour, an hour at a time, and then I take a 5-minute break and I still work 10 hours today or 8 hours, being really generous. People usually only work like 2 to 3 hours a day. Honestly, in sales, just line in the water, actually dialed in working, it's usually only like 2 to 3 hours. And even then, that's above average, I would say. If you look at real sales teams and you want to go like track exactly what they're doing, they're very likely working significantly less than you think. But if I want to sell at a high level, I need everyone working consistently where they are calling on customers and actually line in the water for a consistent period of time. Because every break that I take is not just the amount of time in the break where I could have been selling people. So it's not 5 minutes times 10 breaks, 50 minutes total that I wasn't actually selling. You have to look at the cost of your focus. If I'm not dialed in focused on every single interaction with a customer, I have a very low likelihood of selling those people, because so much of the interaction is just instinctual at a certain level. And if I'm not focused on my response times, really being dialed in with the customer, unrelenting about leaving the doorstep or the interaction, and you don't want to leave it on a bad note, but I'm just saying, like, a really good sales rep is dialed in, constantly thinking like, okay, I need to get them to this point to where I feel that they agree with these set of facts before I can move on. They're not quite agreeing yet, and I know that's the case. So how do I circle back and make sure this thing is clear? That requires an extreme amount of focus. So if I take a break every 30 hour, 2 hours, and you might say like, yeah, people don't actually do it. Of course they do. You probably do it. I do it. We all do it and think that we're working harder than we actually are. Real work, though, is dialed in, consistent focus for a long period of time, 2 to 3 hours at least. When I was running sales teams, my culture, I did not make this mandatory all because of, I don't even remember why, maybe it's contractual reasons or something. didn't want moms of sales reps like being mad at me for making their kids work too long. Our culture, though, was no breaks. We would work 8 hours consistently with 0 breaks. My best sales teams ever, and the consistently high performing sales teams that were like standard deviations above the mean in team performance per rep and earnings per rep, frankly, those teams, our culture was to work relentlessly with no breaks. That's how you should be if you want to be a top performer. And that's how your teams should be if you want your teams to perform at a high level consistently. That's baseline number 1. Notice we have how many metrics here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 categories of metrics within our pipeline that McKay's going to be tracking to see how he can improve those things, and so that we know what to focus on from a training standpoint. Hours worked. The thing that I just ranted on is the first of the 7 stages. So then you have to say, how many doors am I knocking? Or if you're not in a door knocking, sales environment, if you don't knock doors, but you make phone calls, how many calls did you actually make? You want to go from the highest control inputs to the lowest control inputs. I can control exactly how many hours I work. There's very little that's out of my control there. I can control how long my line is in the water. You don't want to count hours where you think you're working. It's how many hours am I working with my line in the water. Getting past 3 objections after someone doesn't accept the appointment or your pricing terms or whatever the final stage of your deal flow is, getting past 3 objections, now that's a bit more out of my control, but it's still an important metric if I want to know what to focus on in my training. And every demarcation of where I get to with a person in the sale is a metric that gives me training data. So if you want to be able to self-train at a very high level, and we would teach our teams this, so that like my best teams in the country, they were tenacious at the individual sales rep level of using these systems to proactively train themselves, using our training and using the resources they had with their team leaders and managers. But if I know that I knocked 90 doors, I only talked to 30 decision makers, and my decision makers to close rate, let's say I'm only closing like 2% of my decision makers to close rate. How do I know what to work on if I don't track the 4 other stages that I usually go through with a customer before I get to closing? You might think that your problem is the objection right before you close the deal, but that's not your problem. It's likely much earlier in the sale than you think. So being meticulous about tracking is important, even if there are metrics down your pipeline that are lower control metrics, like how many times, like for him, it's the PPA. I don't even remember what PPA was called, but that's what we would do. We called this price because it was how I ensured if our sales reps were getting to price with customers, then they were at least reiterating price before they made the close, which would have a higher likelihood of the customer going from the sale is on the board as a sale and the business makes money. If you're in sales management and you're not worried about your business making money, then good luck having a job for very long. Also, by the way, people are so bad at this in sales management that you can win big in any company that you just actually care about the business making money, which is why that would be the final stage. But this is, since McKay is in solar and he's in a 2-call close, which means that he's going to be setting an appointment and then going in to close the deal later. We need to understand the deal flow or the pipeline stages of both of those interactions with customers. And that should map up to a system that we are running that has a consistent script that's in line with each of those stages, which McKay instinctually is socially competent. He actually wants to sell instead of just putting numbers up on the board. So he already sees this as like, okay, I always have to do this thing just to make sure they understand it before I move on. Building that into a process makes it easier to detect when you are going wrong with that or where you need to focus your training efforts. Another example here, like the one we used in the call, was if I get through my complete introduction with the customer, which is typically after you greet them and when you get into, hey, why I'm here, what I'm doing, having a stage that is your introduction is also an argument for being just very direct and upfront with customers. Because the reason why a customer says yes or no to you is not because you eased into the sale and then they bit and they finally want it because you were worried about them telling you no right away. It's because of how you interact with them in the first 4 to 7 seconds. Specifically, it's how you actually look in the first it's like 100 milliseconds basically. People are making a decision about you. They're judging you in the first 4 to 7 seconds. They have a decision made about who you are and what you mean to them and what they're willing to do in the interaction with you at 7 seconds at the latest. Attention spans are so short right now, though, that legitimately short form social media content has probably lowered that attention span to, I would guess it's anywhere between 2 to 5 seconds, maybe, depending on even what industry you're in too. So if you're in an industry where it's a low pressure sale that's not a cold call, 7 seconds is when people are judging you and they've made up their mind about you subconsciously. But it's 100 milliseconds when they make the first judgment. They're just deciding if that judgment is the same by 7 seconds. They're deciding if the thing they're judging you about, whether you're competent, confident, how you position yourself, if you're actually professionally going to be able to help them in anything that you do, they've already made up their mind by 7 seconds subconsciously. Then this is what the data shows us. The research is very clear on this. 100 milliseconds, though, is when that decision is first formed in their mind. And then it's solidified at 7 seconds. With all of this, that's why I had a bunch of sales pitches from McKay that are recordings I was going to listen to. I did listen to a few and I have a lot of suggestions that we'll go over later. If you're a really good sales trainer, you need to understand the broad picture of, do they even have a system that they're running that we can work within? Because if we're going to train McKay on improving his introduction without making huge changes to his sales process, he has to understand what his own process is first before we even do that. Otherwise, the training goes to waste because you don't know what to repeat and you don't know if that's actually the thing that's working or not.